This is the second part of the presentation, Challenges of Using Social Media for Outreach. We'll go right on to wasting students' time and/or invading their privacy. According to Dixon and Holly, ultimately social networking by academic libraries can only be effective if library efforts are not seen as encroaching on student privacy and if they are not perceived as wasting valuable student time. Now again, Dixon and Holly's article was published in 2010, and a lot of the literature that they draw on is earlier than that. So we're talking about studies that have examined social media in its early stages. In its early stages, social media was primarily and almost exclusively used by younger generations. So studies around this time reported a lot of negative sentiments from college students on older generations joining and using social media sites. But the youngest generation isn't the only group using social media any longer. In fact, in terms of internet users, as of 2010, 62% of Generation X were social network site users, 50% of younger boomers were social network site users, and 43% of older boomers were. So now it's generally considered more appropriate for older generations to use social media, and there's less negative reaction from students and younger generations to older generations using social media. But this doesn't mean that there shouldn't be concern for respecting students' personal space. So these are some guidelines in regards to this issue. First, only initiate interaction with students who have public profiles. By definition, these users are more comfortable sharing with the public and will likely be more comfortable interacting with library staff online. Next, of course, libraries have historically been concerned with issues of privacy for their patrons, so it's also important to apply these rules to the online world and delete private messages between patrons and library staff. Likewise, you should really only post photos and videos of students with their permission, and also only tag them in the photos or videos with their permission. In regard to wasting students' time, it's a good rule of thumb to only post about 7 to 10 times a week. This is so as not to overwhelm students with messages from the library and thus discourage them from following you. Now, privacy has always been a great concern for libraries, and there's no reason why it shouldn't be in social media as well. And we want to make sure that patrons know that we value their privacy. So a good place to start with this is to keep up to date on privacy issues. Now, the ALA Office of Intellectual Freedom has a whole initiative on the issue of privacy in the online realm, so this is a good place to start. We should also model responsible privacy behavior because this impresses upon patrons our concern for the matter. Now we can also compile a privacy research guide for students just as we compile them for other subjects. We can hold instructional sessions on online privacy and participate in Privacy Week. Now the goal here is to impress upon students our concern for their privacy and inspire them to become more vigilant in managing their own privacy as well. Now moving right along, we have resistance from librarians and/or administrators. According to Dixon and Holly, academic libraries must also be in favor of social networking for it to be an effective tool. A survey of 126 academic librarians in 2007 found that 54% of librarians surveyed did not believe that there was an academic purpose for Facebook. Additionally, most librarians felt that Facebook was a student space and that librarians and other university administrators should not invade this space. Now, as mentioned earlier, social media is no longer just a space for the younger generation and students specifically. And as social media has evolved, there's been greater opportunities for marketing and advertising that can't be overlooked at this point. So where I would begin with librarian and administrator naysayers is to refer to the data. So what we can see here is that not only have students of all ages adopted social networking sites at a rapid rate, but a lot of them, the majority in fact, use social media currently, and not just the young ones. Furthermore, as the young generation ages, it's likely that they'll continue to use social media so that the idea that social media is only for young people will completely disappear. Now, one of the most frequently cited reasons for librarians not maintaining a Facebook page is the belief that Facebook demonstrates little to no value in an academic setting. However, this is really not the case anymore. Many studies have found that social media has great value in education. But I think resistance to social media often stems from a lack of understanding of it. So the first place to start in addressing acceptance from librarians and administrators is to promote enlightenment. So these are just some good ways to get them up to speed. First of all, create an annotated bibliography of relevant literature. Additionally, a fact sheet is good just for a quick synopsis. You can maintain a blog of social media news and resources since things change very frequently. And you can develop tutorials and instructional sessions on using social media. But essentially, my opinion is that educating staff will lead to a greater understanding of the value of social media and an acceptance for it. But I also think you can't knock it until you try it. So it's also good to encourage involvement in social media activities. So encourage staff to create a social media account or accounts. Solicit support from staff for social media content, get everyone involved. And then also commission a committee of staff members to collaboratively create a social media policy. And that way everyone's concerns about the use of social media can be addressed. So managing social media also requires a great deal of time. As Dixon and Holly say, ultimately social networking requires continuous updating, knowledge of changes to the social tools, and monitoring user comments. Thus, academic librarians must be willing to dedicate their time to the social network-based student outreach for methods to be successful. Indeed, 39% of marketers spend 1 to 5 hours a week on social media, while 58% of marketers spend 6 hours or more on social media a week. So in order to manage time efficiently, I would suggest that you choose platforms selectively. You don't need to address every single social media platform out there, but it's more important to address your patrons' needs and their interests. In addition to selectively choosing platforms, it's also a good idea to at least initially only use one central account per platform for a library system, unless there's a library in the system that is drastically different from the others. In terms of time management, it can also be useful to solicit contributions from all staff members in terms of content posted on social media sites. Doing this will not only achieve time efficiency by distributing the work, but it will also mean that you'll get a wide range of content posted on social media sites as a result of it coming from diverse perspectives. It's also useful to integrate technology that streamlines the process. For example, Hootsuite is good for integrating all of the accounts together so you can go to one central place to manage the activity. On Hootsuite, you can schedule posts ahead of time. For example, if you have library closings for holidays, you can schedule those in advance, or finals week messages. You can also install a Hootsuite browser extension to more efficiently share content across the web. Finally, you can also configure Google Alerts to notify you of material that is relevant for posting on social media accounts. And you can configure social media alerts to notify you when anyone is speaking about relevant topics or about either the library or the university to comment on. In a similar vein, an important factor in implementing social media is timeliness. So as Dixon and Holly state, students will expect timely responses to any inquiries sent through social networking tools. They are unlikely to return to social networking tools for library assistance if librarians do not respond quickly to inquiries. So to ensure timeliness and consistency, I would first of all configure notifications for all activity on social media accounts so that libraries can be instantly alerted to activity that needs their attention. I would also recommend responding to all comments within an hour, and if the response requires a more involved response, I would at least acknowledge it within the hour time frame. It's also important to develop a policy for monitoring social media activity during times when professional staff is less present. So times during the weekend or in the evenings needs to be addressed. And the last factor that Dixon and Hawley focus on is reduced librarian control. So ultimately, there is legitimate concern that permitting increased user participation through social tools will remove librarian control over resources and inhibit librarians' ability to use the very resources they are trying to make more accessible among academic library users. I think this mostly refers to social tagging sites, but in general, a good thing to remember about social media is that it's not meant to supplant librarian activities, but rather to supplement them. But above all, I think the most important thing is to institute a social media policy that dictates the library's plan of action to effectively overcome these challenges. Though the policy should address all of these issues, it should begin with a statement of purpose and a definition of social media. You want to identify the goals and objectives for using social media. You need to decide who will do what and when. You need to delineate what is appropriate content and what is not appropriate content. So what's okay for us to post, what's okay for users to post. You need to determine how you're going to measure the effectiveness of social media, also how the libraries will handle issues of copyright and privacy in posted content, and a final disclaimer statement, which would be something along the lines of the views expressed here do not reflect the views of the libraries or the university at large. So that's basically it for the presentation, but a list of references cited in this presentation can be found on my website as well as the presentation on Prezi. Thanks for watching.